What's up, everybody? Welcome to your Hip Pocket series on WoW Arenas. More importantly, on the AWC or the Arena World Championship. In this series, I'm going to be dishing out a handful of Hip Pocket classes on not only WoW Arenas and how to watch them as an esport, but also the classes themselves to make it that much easier to stomach or to understand as you are watching the AWC. The Arena World Championship starts January 15th with EU, then moving into North America. This has been one of the largest prize pools that have been allotted to the arenas in $900,000 split between the two regions. And with that, I would absolutely love to be able to help the viewership grow as well, because unfortunately, WoW Esports as a whole hasn't necessarily been in the best spot when it comes to viewership. So what I want to break down in this first video is some terminology that you will hear from the casters while you are watching the AWC, as well as the overlay, kind of how to get a read on that and what you should be looking for, because I know that there's a whole lot going on. As we take a look at this on our screen now, we've got just a still image of what the overlay looks like in the middle of a match. The AWC format is the 3v3 arenas that you can play yourself with your friends or with randoms in World of Warcraft. And this overlay gives us a handful of information, and sometimes it can be hard to stomach and you're not too sure what's going on because just watching the center of the screen already looks crazy enough. So as we take a look over on the left or the right, we're obviously seeing the classes that are displayed by their class colors as well as the symbols. So on top of showing the health bars, you've also got the power bars below. So that's your mana, that's your energy, whatever it takes to use those abilities for your class. Underneath the health bar and power bars are going to be your cooldowns. So you have your offensive cooldowns, your defensive cooldowns, your interrupts, and your crowd control, as well as some of the things that will help set your team up. If we take a look over at Peekaboo's here, we see that he's got a couple of abilities on cooldown. His Feint, his Evasion, and his Cloak of Shadows. Those are all defensive cooldowns, and you can see the timer until they're back up. You see that pretty little boot is not on cooldown. There is no timer, which means that there is an interrupt available. So at this point, casters, healers, whatever it may be, need to be careful of this rogue. And then moving down the line, the Vendetta and the Smoke Bomb. Those are offensive cooldowns. Could also be used defensively, but Vendetta is going to put a damage buff on a certain target, and Smoke Bomb makes either yourself or anybody inside of the Smoke Bomb untargetable. Another thing you might be noticing right underneath that class symbol is the trinket available for that player. What that does is it allows the player to be relieved from crowd control effects, and CC or crowd control is a term that we cover later in the video. I want to get into terms, but before we hop off of this screen, there's a couple of glaring things at the very top. So up top, we see Method Orange versus the Gosu crew. Method Orange up 2 arena wins to 0 in a best of 7 series. And smack dab in the middle, we've got that healer symbol with a negative 5%. That 5% is showing us how deep into dampening we are. Dampening is a mechanic that starts to reduce the effectiveness of healing inside the arenas, so we're not spending the entire allotted time per arena, or else we'd be here all day for one series. Another term that you're going to hear in these arenas is crowd control or CC. For some of the crowd control effects, we have charms, fears, stuns, incapacitates, and disorients, as well as polymorphs, banish, and horrors. A charm is when somebody takes control. A fear is when somebody runs around randomly. A stun is just as it sounds, you're stunned in place. And an incap or disorient are abilities that are softer CC. What that means is disorients, incaps, and polymorphs are all crowd control effects that will break or that will be lost should the target take damage after they've been applied. As for stuns, charms, fears, you can typically still do damage to targets while they are under that crowd control effect. And then on the soft side of things, you've also got snares, roots, and dazes, which typically just slow the target down. They're not actually hard CCing them to where they cannot play their character. The next term I want to cover are interrupts. A lot of the times you won't necessarily hear them as interrupted, you'll hear the spell itself. So as I pointed out for Peekaboo, he has that kick ability available. That will interrupt a spell cast and lock out that pool of spell casting for a certain amount of time. Some other abilities that you may hear are Counterspell, Wind Shear, Mind Freeze, things of that nature, but a lot of times they can just be chalked up as interrupt. Cooldowns or CDs is the next one on the list here. And they can be offensive cooldowns, defensive cooldowns, or crowd control cooldowns, and those are the abilities that are underneath the health bars on that overlay. Those cooldowns then lead to goes or setups, and a go is exactly as it sounds. It's when your team is saying go, go, go because you've got the string of abilities that you need in order to secure yourself a kill. Last but not least, another very important term is diminishing returns, or DR. When you use a specific school of crowd control, it puts a timer on that target for that specific school. This is your diminishing returns timer. So if you or an ally uses that same school of crowd control on that same target, the effectiveness is going to be reduced by 50%. Meaning if you stun a target, you typically want to wait for that timer to roll off before looking to stun again, unless you're trying to chain together some CC to completely lock somebody down. Lastly, I want to talk about covenants and the signature ability. Not the class abilities, we'll get to that in the hit pocket classes for each of the classes here in World of Warcraft, but I want to talk about what each covenant brings to the table across the board. Kyrian is going to bring you Summon Steward, which summons a steward to bring you 3 Phials of Serenity, which will heal for 1% of your HP and remove some of the damaging statuses. Venthyr is Door of Shadows, and after a short cast, it teleports the user to a target location and it CCs targets in the area. Necrolord brings Fleshcraft, so after a short channel, the user is granted with a shield. And lastly is Night Fae. Night Fae are allotted Soul Shape, which shape shifts the user into a fox-like creature and allows for a blink-like teleport and increased movement speed. Guys, that wraps things up here for your first Hip Pocket class in our Hip Pocket series. If you guys have any questions, please let me know down below. And throughout the series, like I said, we will be covering all of the classes so you guys can get a better idea and a better understanding of WoW Esports as a whole. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the class breakdown.